Our technique of generating cinematic sequences works well for shots of epic battles and action, but our reliance on in-game assets makes it difficult to convey story points and dialogue. We decided fairly early on that instead of creating high-res models of the game's heroes that we could do facial animation with, we'd instead tell our story with paintings accompanied by voiceover and sound effects and music. Ryan Church is an artist I met years ago at Industrial Light and Magic. His paintings of the Grey Havens amaze me. It's such a dramatic location, we really had to bring it to life in epic proportions. This piece by Michael Zimmerman of Elrond at Rivendell after the battle, it was one of the first of these paintings, and it really proved that we could employ this method of storytelling. Blue Mountains map is a fun mix of indoor and outdoor sections. Aesthetically, it kind of picks up where we left off with Moria in the last game. Erebor and Dale are described in a lot of detail in the Lord of the Rings books, so we had a lot of fiction to work from compared to some of the other environments. The buildings we created for Dale are architecturally similar to those you see in Bree in the movie trilogy. They have post and beam construction with tiled roofs. The mix of land, water, and docks in Kelduin was a new challenge for us. Charles Jacoby is one of our map beautification artists, and he came up with a new technique in our level builder, which made the dock pieces work more or less like terrain. Our cinematic sequences were storyboarded in great detail by Michelle Tasic and Rita Leakwart. Good boards are the foundation of any kind of filmic storytelling, whether you're creating an in-game cinematic or a feature film. Weathertop is a key location in the Fellowship of the Ring. Much of the time, our job is just interpreting from the film to the game. The High Pass level is a maze-like snow map. It's really different from anything we had in the original game. We saw a lot of Mordor in the film trilogy, so in the game we just try to be as faithful to that look as possible. Creatively, Dol Guldur is one of the most ambitious levels in the game. It's Sauron's fortress in Mirkwood, so the look we came up with is intentionally very reminiscent of Mordor. In the Lord of the Rings films, the only dwarf we meet is Gimli, other than a brief look at Gloin and one or two of the other dwarves at the Council of Elrond. Consequently, our game's dwarven faction units were largely based on Gimli. They're bearded, stout, heavily armored, and they take no prisoners. In The Lord of the Rings: The Battle for Middle-earth 2, we made a very conscious effort to improve the readability of the faction units, trying to make every type of soldier look distinct. Our dwarves were the beginning of this. As a result, they're more colorful than the units in the original game, and up close their proportions are a bit more extreme. But at game height, you definitely know who's an axe thrower and who's a phalanx without any problem. The dwarven architecture in the game is entirely based on the look of the Mines of Moria in the Fellowship of the Ring. It's all about hexagons and bas-relief sculptures of dwarven heroes. The elves have the greatest variety of outfits in the films. Gossamer fabrics in their homelands, functional uniforms at the Battle of Helm's Deep, and more elaborate armor at the Battle of the Last Alliance. With this wealth of visual material to start from, designing the elven faction units was easier than some of the others. The elves have probably the most defined style of architectural design in the films. Each brick and shingle of every elven faction structure we created came directly from one of the movie set buildings in Rivendell, Lothlorien, or the Grey Havens. In the original Battle for Middle-earth, each unit had an interface portrait taken from a frame of film. In the game's sequel, we considered shooting portraits of actors wearing prosthetics to get interface art for characters like mountain giants, or building custom armor to photograph Mythlon sentries. Ultimately, the illustrated parchment look of the interface art was created by Insun Kang and Eno Corella, and it was the best way to merge everything into a cohesive look which felt appropriate for the game. Dragons were a serious design challenge in this game. I mean, how do you dream up a nightmarish monster which lives up to the majesty of the Fell Beast in the movie trilogy without having it look like it belongs on a fantasy novel book cover? So virtually every artist on our project contributed in some way to the look of our game's dragons, and I hope the dragons we arrived at turned out suitably imposing. Coming up with an architectural style for the goblins was really difficult. The goblins are only seen in the first film, The Fellowship of the Ring, and they don't really build anything. They just infest the dwarven stronghold of Moria. So initially we tried designing the goblin faction buildings as captured and wrecked dwarven structures, but the result didn't really seem distinct or interesting enough. This goblin arrow tower illustration by Feng Zhu became known as the Witch Hat building. It took the Mordor goblins' rough, rusty, nasty, spiky armor as a starting point and built it into sort of a chaotic form of architecture from which all the other haphazard goblin buildings flowed. Color keys were an important part of the initial art process. Some of the settings, like the Shire and Minas Morgul, were visually established by the films, but many of the game's locations, like Kelduin and Dol Guldur, were interpreted entirely from Tolkien's fiction. Tim Williams painted nearly all these color keys, which were the first step in this interpretation, defining mood and color and lighting for every one of the game's environments.